Welcome everybody. Welcome to the Somerset House Earth Day live stream with designer Bethany Williams. This is part of our annual programme for Earth Day, which explores artists and designers and makers thinking about the current climate emergency that we're all in. Obviously this year is a little bit different to how we'd normally work, but we're very, very pleased that this project with Bethany Williams called All Our Children has been able to go ahead. Welcome to everyone who's joining us for this Earth Day, the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, and our live stream here with the wonderful designer Bethany Williams. Thank you for being here, Bethany. As I briefly mentioned, Earth Day is something that we celebrate annually here at Somerset House with different artist commissions. And obviously this year is a little bit different in that Somerset House is currently closed. But in this kind of like age of climate emergency, we just felt that it was really, really important to continue exploring kind of themes around climate action and hearing the voices of the artists and designers who are working in that field. So welcome, Bethany. So Bethany's practice is, she's a fashion designer, but all her projects are very kind of like socially engaged, as well as like thinking about the environment through her kind of practice and her production generally. Bethany, would you mind kind of giving us a little bit of an overview generally about how you work and what you're up to at the moment?
Yeah, so we've been working with the project, the Magpie Project, which is based in Newham. So it's a charity that supports women and children and families in Newham that are homeless or in temporary accommodation. So yes, we've been working with them with a collection that we launched in January, and then we're continuing the project under the title All of Our Children. So yeah, that's what we've been doing recently.
Fantastic. And would you be able to give us a little bit of an overview of, I mean, I suppose your kind of like past practice, and because you work in collections, and just talk a little bit about your kind of like process of making.
Yeah, so with the process of making, we start with a charitable organisation, and then from that point on, we work collectively with that organisation. And so like when we worked with the Magpie Project, we were looking into, like we went and researched the Museum of Childhood around children's clothing, and kind of went through the archives, and we kind of looked into toy manufacturing in the UK and taking waste from that to weave fabrics. And yeah, so we kind of like set up a system. So we worked alongside Jane, the founder of Magpie, to see if we can provide any other solutions as well with the collection. And then we donate 20% of the proceeds from the sales back to Magpie. And then, so then we also develop recycled materials and organic materials, and everything's either hand woven, hand knitted, or hand printed. And then we work with local manufacturing, and we also work with different social projects in the UK and in Italy. So we are currently working with the Making for Change project, which is set up by London College of Fashion and the Ministry of Justice. So they have a manufacturing unit, the first one in Downview Prison. So it's paid employment and level 1 and level 2 skill sets. And it's kind of the first project set up for women in prison. In the UK, women make up 4% of the prison population, but they have the highest reoffending rates. So we really wanted to support that project, and now they're setting up their secondary project in Poplar, where our studio moves in, which is kind of working with the Poplar community, but also people that have finished the Downview project have work on leaving Downview in Poplar. So we're kind of like setting up, we're working, our studio's moving in there as well. And then we're taking on sample machinists from the Making for Change project on release.
Oh, fantastic. And I suppose like one thing that I'm really inspired by in terms of the way you work is that obviously, you know, kind of what some of the things that you're talking about women prisoners, you're talking about homelessness, you're talking about vulnerably housed families. These are kind of like really social, like really serious social issues. But just to kind of bring it back to the environment, and given that it's Earth Day, how do you feel like your kind of practice in terms of making and thinking of the environment relates to also thinking about social justice?
Yeah, I think that like as a designer, you know, I think it's really important to connect people and the planet, and I think that's really important. Not just thinking of one or the other; it's the interaction of the two. So yeah, I think with the All Our Children project, you know, it was talking about the homeless crisis with families in the UK, and you know, like when we were you know commissioning to do the flag, you know, in Westminster and within Newham, there's 1 in 11 children are homeless within those boroughs. So I think it was just like, and you know, when speaking with Jane at Magpie, you know, a lot of the responses to families that were trying to seek help was like, these children aren't our children. So we were kind of just like wanting to make a project that claims all the children of London.
Mm-hmm. Just thinking through, I suppose, kind of climate and environmental destruction. Like one thing that I've been thinking about while we've been kind of discussing this project over a couple of months is how your work is really about the most vulnerable in our society. And that is something that, you know, whether you're working with kind of homeless groups or women's prisoners or, you know, any of the other collections that you've had in the past, just kind of the focus on the most vulnerable in our world is so important to be thinking about when we think about climate action. And obviously, you know, the way that you make, using kind of recycled or sustainably sourced materials, you know, you kind of do that through your kind of like everyday methods of production. But you're kind of like also touching on something that I think it's really important in terms of everyone working to do something about climate thinks about in terms of the most vulnerable in our society. And I wouldn't mind, I wondered if you could expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's just how fashion can be used as a force for good, you know, within the supply chain. Yeah, and then also reflecting back on, you know, reusing materials and sourcing materials that are organic, and, you know, trying to think about the whole product, like down to the buttons, down to the thread, down to all the components. I think it's like really interesting. But yeah, I think with everything that's going on right now, within the world and with COVID, I think it's showing us that we're all connected, you know. And I think, you know, especially like in the UK, like people are being housed, and I think it, you know, and people are now being looked after. So I think it just shows you that we're all connected and we all have a responsibility.
I wondered, did you want to show any images of your work, just so that viewers at home might get a better sense of your kind of practice?
Yeah, of course. I can just, here we go.
Fantastic. And so this was your last collection, was it?
Yeah, so this was the No Rights to Recall Public Funds. Yeah, so we kind of worked with the illustrator Melissa Kitty, and yeah, she did all the prints. So she came to Magpie and met the mothers and heard their stories, and drew them with their children, and they kind of became the inspiration to the prints. And we did like a lot of quilting, like the socks quilting, and like we use like recycled bedding and recycled quilts, because with Magpie, every baby that is born into the charity receives a blanket made by the WI in Canning Town. So we kind of wanted to reflect like those ideas of like comfort, and the kind of themes around the collection were like motherhood and childhood, sisterhood, and also like the family that you choose as well. So these were the print stories that Melissa created through the Mums of Magpie had worked with Mind and did these really beautiful illustrations of what feels like home. And then Melissa responded to them with her own drawings, but it became another of the print stories. So this is upcycled fleece. So we did all like different patchworks from different fleece and scraps that we had. And then this is mashed together different cords that we had, cord trousers into the jumpsuit. And then the buttons are handmade with a workshop in the Isle of Man where I'm from, which supports people like wanting to go back into work and needing confidence after, say, having like a physical or mental disability. And then this is all hand knitted by my mom, so she did the sample, which is the Wool and the Gang yarn that we collaborate with.
Fantastic.
And then this is organic herringbone material sourced from Wales. So we work with the organic textile company there. And then these are all patchworked old jumpers that we worked with a knitwear designer called Alice Evans. So she like patched it all together. And then these were old blankets that we made into a coat.
Sounds like you really think about all the materials and where they're coming from as part of your process.
Yeah, I think for like the material sense, I think is really important to me, because I feel more that I'm like a textile designer than a menswear designer. This is another one of Melissa's illustrations. And then this is upcycled tents, and we had loads of scraps left over from production. So Natalie, who I work with, did she patchworked all of this together. And then this is actually we upcycled this from a last collection. So the first collection we had over from production, this left over, but it's hand woven with a community in Italy called San Pacignano, which is a drug rehabilitation centre. So I was introduced to them like 3 years ago when I did an art residency with them with London College of Fashion and the Xenia Foundation. And so they have, it's a community of like 1,200 people, and I think it has the highest one of the highest recovery rates in the world. So they kind of produce beautiful handmade products and kind of encourage Italian craftsmanship. So we work with the handwoven textile department, so they hand weave for us, and we work with they have donations from Italian mills of like dead stock, and then this was waste material that we had in the community, so it's all hand woven with them. But they also do like they have like cultivation, hand painted wallpaper, leather bags, they make wine, like they have like an award-winning cheese and like panettone. So yeah, it's quite varied what they do. But yeah, so we've been working with them for 3 years with that.
Fantastic.
So this is a material that we sourced from Germany, which is organic, and then everything's screen printed in Peckham with auto print. So they're based in Peckham Levels. Yeah. And then this is dead stock ribbons that we had woven, but this was actually woven in Bristol, this material, hand woven with waste yarns. And then, the jacket, this is actually toy ribbon waste. So there's a company that produce these little kind of like stuffed horses, like toys, and then they make rosettes to kind of go around their neck. So they sent us all of their scraps, which we kind of put together for the jacket. And then the shirt is dead stock ribbons and dead stock yarns that's been woven.
So what comes first when you're thinking about a new collection? Is it the organizations and the people that you're choosing to work with, or is it particular materials and dead stock that you've come across?
Yeah, I think usually it will start with the organisation. So like with the social projects that we work with, we always work with them on production and like sampling. Mm-hmm. But then each like collection is with a different project. So like, yeah, with the Magpie Project, we start with like Magpie, what they want to say through the collection and how we can help in any way. And then we start connecting. And then the inspiration kind of comes from the organization itself, and then we go and do research. So yeah, like I think it's usually quite site specific. So we did a project in Liverpool, so then there was lots of research in Liverpool, like working with that organization, and then that kind of like influences the collection.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking about, so our work with you, the border project is called All Our Children, and what you and I have been talking about over the last couple of months is this idea of future generations and who are the most vulnerable in our society, and what kind of world and what kind of like wishes do we want for those people who we might never meet but who will come after us. And as part of that, you've been working with continuing to work with Magpie. So I wonder, would you mind just talking about your how you're imagining All Our Children, which is your next collection, moving forward, and the processes that you're designing, and then maybe we'd also kind of like watch the Magpie video for a minute.
Because with the Magpie Project, Jane and Magpie wanted to kind of, for the last collection, it was No Rights to Recourse of Public Funds was the title of the collection, and it's kind of like a category that a lot of the women that are helped through the Magpie Project are classed under, so they're not able to access the NHS, or they're not able to access any public funds, and so it just makes everything so much more difficult, and then so that's actually been taken to the higher court, because it's actually, with the COVID situation, it's really affecting this group, and people actually are talking about it, which is great. But as we were moving forward for this project, All of Our Children, we were kind of like thinking about, all of the children of London, and like all of the children of the future and the past, and thinking of messages that we wanted to send to the people of the future, and through the Magpie Project, I think like the children the people that are really vulnerable are going to become more adults. So it was kind of thinking about those ideas, and we need to protect our future and look after all of our children, and then with the flag, we were then moving on to create a collection, and wanted to kind of make it inclusive to as many people as possible. So we were going to try and build a collection site specifically with Somerset House, and do workshops, but we're actually wanting to do that online. So so I think we're going to be running 3 workshops and collecting information, and that kind of informing the design process and informing the collection.
So it's very much a kind of like ongoing project and process over the next couple of months, with audiences and public, I suppose, kind of like feeding ideas and thoughts into your process. Interesting way to work.
I think it's just, I think it's just really nice to kind of share the process of how a collection comes together, and like how that translates into the shapes and how that translates into the ideas and the print stories, and building that like collectively, I think would be really beautiful and quite powerful.
And we'll come back to it again, but we've got a flag workshop which is up online now, which you made some great videos for. So today is obviously Earth Day, and what we're inviting people to do is to follow Bethany's workshop and make a flag. But Bethany, can you talk about how this first workshop might roll into the future ones kind of coming up?
Yeah, so because we couldn't raise our flag today with the Magpie Project at Somerset House, we were just like, it's obviously we can do it when we can socialise again. And so obviously really looking forward to that moment, but we thought in the meantime everyone could raise their own smaller flag with messages either like from your past generation or messages you kind of want to send to your next generation. And then we can raise that flag for Earth Day together. But then the next kind of workshops is sourcing research for shapes. So asking if you had any, I'm going to share like my favorite images of myself with my favorite garments as a child, and favorite of my mum's garments, and my grandma images of my grandma's favorite garments, and like my granddad's favorite garments, and then kind of like informing the shapes and speaking about our generations and the messages that we kind of want to leave to our next generation. And then we're going to be doing like drawing workshops, print workshops, and then and gathering information.
Fantastic. Would this be a good moment to show the kind of because you've talked about Magpie Project a lot, they're kind of really informing a lot of your work, but so they're a charity based in Newham where there's some of the worst homelessness, right?
It's the worst, has the I have like 2,500 families like over that, so it's like the worst affected area in London, and they have more people in temporary accommodation in that borough than the whole of the northwest of England. Great.
I will just show, because I think we're running out of time, so I'll just show like a minute or so, just so people get a kind of a sense of that. 1 second.
She said, "My name is heavy." She's watched it fidget in mouths that could not carry it, could not balance it on their tongues long enough, so they spat it out, called her by her case number instead, and left the name she came with on the doorstep. She wanted to tell them to handle it with care, that her name carried the legacy of her mother and will one day belong to her daughter too. She said she wished that her daughter knew just how cold it was outside of the womb, so that maybe she'd stay there a little longer. She promised to stretch her body, make enough room inside her belly for a child to grow and play and learn to walk, because she has found that this ground cracks under the slightest pressure. She has seen the earth open up and swallow innocent children whole, so how could she trust it to hold her own? She said she remembers the taste of home. She lets it sit on her lips at night, takes a bite out of her memories when nobody is looking, and for a second she feels full, whole, until guilt gnaws holes into her stomach. Her conscience will not let her enjoy a memory she cannot pass down to her children. She said she watches them sleep and prays that their dreams take them to places she cannot. Not because it is too far. Her feet are used to walking. Her eyes are...
Oops, I'm just going to stop it there.
Okay.
And we'll get that the full video up online and share that. But I suppose some of the kind of themes and the ideas within that film and your work with Magpie again is talking about the kind of most vulnerable in society, linking back to environment, like obviously like as an industry is one of the most polluting in the world. And your practice is so interesting because you're trying to kind of make and produce and do things differently and really use your kind of creative practice and the skills and creativity within fashion for good. Can you just, like, before we kind of tail off, so the kind of the takeaways, the invites for people to get involved are to please go online and if you fancy getting creative, and please tell your like families and your housemates, make a flag for Earth Day, and through that kind of process we're kind of contributing research and ideas around future generations to Bethany's next collection. And also, like, Bethany, you're doing some amazing work currently this week in relation to COVID-19. Would you mind talking about that?
So basically I've worked alongside Phoebe English and Holly Fulton, and we set up the emergency designer network, and then we're also working now with Cosette, who's kind of handling the PR of everything. But we were kind of getting inundated with requests from hospitals asking us to make scrubs and to make gowns. So we've kind of set up a network of designers and makers that are now doing that. So yeah, we kind of come together as a group to set it up and have been fundraising. And it's like a voluntary project, but we obviously needed the money for materials to get NHS certified materials. So we've kind of set up as a network and connecting 35 makers and designers in London and larger manufacturers. So we've found the material, paid for the material. It's been sent to larger manufacturers, and we developed, Phoebe's pattern cutter developed, we worked with the Royal Free Hospital. They sent us the scrubs and we made the patterns and then sent them the samples to approve, and then those patterns have been like digitalized, so we sent them to the factories, and then we've then put packs together, individual packs with like thread, material, instructions to be sent out to smaller manufacturers in London, and then they're kind of all being distributed with Net-a-Porter, so they're sponsoring the courier services. And then we found like a washer who's able to like wash everything at 90 degrees once it's made and then deliver that to the hospitals. So it's kind of like, like making a system to respond to the crisis.
And, you know, that's what I'm so inspired by in relation to your work and in relation to your collections and your projects. And, you know, more recently, the Emergency Design Network is like threading together these individual relationships, ideas, but actually taking action rather than just talking about it.
Yeah, I just think we all felt quite helpless because we were all receiving requests and we're like, oh, what can we do? So we just set it up.
Fantastic. And is there do you want to suggest a link that people can go to if they
so the website is emergencydesignerNetwork.org, and you can find out more about the project, and also, like, you know, if you're a maker, you know, we can send out packs, and you know, if you have materials to donate, or if you have funds to donate, there's a GoFundMe link on there as well. But it's been a very long 4 weeks, but it's starting to come together. I think we'll be delivering the first scrubs on Monday, so that's
great work. And then in terms of all our children, I suppose please just go online, keep on like watching online in terms of somersethouse.org.uk, and we've got the flag making workshop up today, so Bethany and all of us will be keeping out for everyone's flags, and we really encourage you to take part in that. And then Bethany, when's the next workshop going to be up live?
So it'll be 2 weeks from now.
2 weeks from now. And then this is obviously like an ongoing project leading to your kind of next collection, so it'll be a couple of months. But thank you so much, Bethany, for
thanks for having me
and being so inspiring. Obviously, this is a really difficult time for artists and makers and everyone, really. But one thing that we've started at Somerset House is a Somerset House Crisis Fund. So just to leave you that if you can, please help support and donate to Somerset House Crisis Fund. Somerset House is working hard to find ways that we can help alleviate the impact of its creative community, which include resident artists and Somerset House studios. If you're able to help support that effort, please consider making a donation, which would go towards sustaining the creative community. And somersethouse.org.uk has more information about that. And then obviously Emergency Design Network, and really excited about how all our children evolve, and let's keep on thinking and bringing ideas of what we want to kind of leave to future generations in our minds as we celebrate Earth Day.
Okay.
Thank you, Bethany.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.